Namaste and welcome. It is Rishi here from meditatewithrishi.com, and today we are going to be exploring or beginning to explore the three non-Vedic philosophies. So today we are starting with the Jain philosophy or Jainism, and in this video you will see that Jainism is actually a very practical philosophy. It is a very simple and beautiful philosophy, especially because it contains the answers to a lot of the problems that human society is facing today. Okay? In fact, it is something that should be studied by everybody. It is something that should be used as a motivation in order to make the world a better place, in order to make our planet a better place, and of course, really know what it takes to attain freedom, to attain liberation, if we want to do it in an all-encompassing and loving way. In fact, there is no other way. So let's get to it, okay? So the first idea I want to present is we will be exploring the three main questions. So what is the nature of the self? Who am I? What is the cause of suffering? And most importantly, how can we become free of the suffering? How can we attain liberation, attain moksha, attain kaivalya, essentially? Okay? So, the first idea is that in the Jain philosophy, there is no creator God. There is no Ishvara. Okay? So, Jain philosophy is saying to us that there is no need for an Ishvara because the universe is eternal, the world is eternal, okay? So if you remember, in the Nyaya Vaisheshika philosophy, we studied the concept of the eternal matter and eternal souls. It is actually very similar in the Jain philosophy, okay? So it's saying that matter is eternal, souls are eternal, the world has always existed and will always continue to exist in cycles, essentially. So the two important components are the jiva and the ajiva, okay? So jiva is the soul, the conscious soul is the jiva, and then the ajiva is the unconscious matter, okay? And the combination of these is what is giving us creation, essentially. So of course, similar to Nyaya Vaisheshika philosophy, based on your karma, based on your actions, you will get a different body every birth, okay? So I think it's a good time to point out that the non-Vedic philosophies, even though they may disagree with different aspects of the Vedas, the two things that they do agree upon are rebirth and karma. So Jainism has the concept of rebirth and karma. Buddhism, again, has the concept of rebirth and karma, okay? So the idea is that your karma, the karmas, the actions that you have done in one life will dictate what body, what form you are getting in the next life, okay? So now what is the cause of suffering in the Jain philosophy? And the cause of suffering is very simple. The cause of suffering is simply your own karma. Your own actions are what lead to suffering. And they're very strong in this. It is your own actions that lead to suffering, okay? So think about this for a second, right? The law of karma essentially is, you can say in a very simple way, is the law of cause and effect, right? Good leads to good, bad leads to bad, right? So by that logic, if we are performing a bad action is obviously one where we are harming the well-being of another being. Then that has to come back to us, right? That has to come back to us, essentially. That suffering that we have caused somebody else, it has to come back to us. So Jain philosophy is telling us that everything, every plant, every animal, every human, every bacteria actually has a soul. It is a living organism. It is a jiva. And it has a soul. And because of that, it can feel pain. It can feel suffering. Okay? So just in the way that we live, we actually cause a lot of suffering to so many beings, to so many living organisms. We cause so much suffering, right? So why is this? Why do we do this, right? So this is really important to understand. Now, the nature of the self, right? The first question that we answered is that we are this. We are the jiva. We are the eternal soul, okay? So the eternal soul will just continue taking body after body after body if it continues to do karmas and karmas and karmas, right? So our true nature is not this body. Our true nature is an eternal soul. We just take many different bodies, just like our body every day wears many different clothes, right? So why do we get attached to the body, right? Because we come in here, right? We take this life and then we start thinking that I'm this body, and we get attached to this body. And when we get attached to this body, we become very protective of it. We try to do everything to keep it safe, to please the body, right? All we want is to please ourselves, to be happy all the time. And it is this false knowledge that we are the body. We think we're the body. And this false knowledge leads us to commit actions which bring suffering to other organisms, to other life, okay? So I want you to understand this from a very simplistic point of view, okay? So if you are saying that, okay, I'm this body, right? This is me. This body is me. So the first thing, you will do is you will try to live somewhere to protect from heat and cold and weather, and to give yourself some comfort. Just to live somewhere, we must build a house. And to build that house, we must dig up the earth and kill insects, kill bacteria, kill plants. So just for that, we are actually creating suffering to a lot of beings. Just a simple thing, right, that we never think about. To eat food, a lot of, let's say a big part of the world population is eating meat, right? So they're directly killing animals. This is harming animals. This is causing suffering. But even if you are vegetarian, right, you are still killing plants for your food. And according to Jain philosophy, even plants essentially have a soul, and you are creating suffering for them because you have to eat. So everything that you do, right, anything, the whole process of accumulation, to accumulate anything, right, you must cause suffering to another being. In a way, you can say that your very existence is the cause of your suffering, because to exist in this world, you must do karma. And most of the karma that you will do is going to negatively affect other life on this planet, from simple living to simple eating to simple walking on the road. You are killing insects at the bottom. Okay, so forget about the bigger things that we think are bad karma, like killing somebody or stealing from somebody, right? Just the process of living itself, existing, surviving, is creating a lot of bad karma. So what Jain philosophy is saying, that this is the reason for our suffering. So how do we become free from suffering? This is where we must become absolutely, clear about what effect our actions are having. And we must try to minimize the amount of suffering that we cause to the life around us. Okay? So I will give you an example. Jain monks, for this reason, they have taken, extreme paths to avoid inflicting suffering on others. So at the very top order of Jain monks, you will see that they do not even wear clothes, because wearing clothes means you have to wash the clothes, which means that you have to kill bacteria. So this is something I can do without. I can just not wear any clothes. Fine, get rid of that. In the food that they eat, there is, with the fine tooth comb, they have looked at where we're doing the most harm. So let's say in a vegan diet, which many people think is extreme, you can actually eat all vegetables. But Jain monks do not even eat vegetables that are root vegetables that come from the ground, like onions or potatoes or carrots, because when you uproot the vegetable, you have to essentially, dig them out, right? You have to kill insects, kill bacteria. Again, this is something that's not necessary. Whereas when you have things like wheat or grains, this, they die themselves. And this is a less harmful way of eating, right? So with a fine tooth comb, they've even looked at which foods can we eat that will create the least harm. They eat once a day. In extreme examples, you will see that before walking, they will carry a broom and sweep the floor so as not to harm any insects. Because that also causes suffering. Unknowingly, we create so much suffering, so much harm to the beings around us. Right? We have taken everything for granted. Now, this is a very extreme way that they live. But in our real world, we can try and come close to that, right? We can try and come close to that, because what we are doing right now is the other extreme. We are killing our rainforests. We are killing our oceans. If you watch the documentary Seaspiracy, you will see that most of the oceans in the world, the life in them is almost non-existent, right? Animals becoming extinct, rainforests burning down, climate change, all these things, all these problems. Imagine if the world adopts the lifestyle of Jain monks or something very close to that. How much less suffering we can cause in this planet. And by causing less suffering, it means that we are doing less bad karma, which means that less suffering will come back to us. Less suffering will come back to us. We're living in this age of the pandemic, right? Corona. And we have been, people's lives have been turned upside down, right? But how often do we go to the root of this and think, why is this happening? Nothing is above the law of nature. Nothing is above the law of the universe. Nothing is above the law of karma. As humanity, the pain that we have inflicted on this planet ultimately is what is coming back to us. I know that may sound harsh, but it's not as harsh as what we have inflicted on the planet, right? So the point I'm trying to make is that this Jain philosophy, it really puts things into perspective about how much harm we cause, how in so many ways we can live better, because there are people who have done this. Jain monks do this, right? And through this path, they have attained liberation, essentially. They've attained liberation. So it is a very thought-provoking philosophy, and one that we should all know about and take as motivation, essentially. Take as motivation, all right? So how do we do this? How do we practice this philosophy? Now, I'm going to take you through 5 steps that have been given to us in Jain philosophy, okay? And it is said that these 5 steps, if you wholeheartedly practice them, and of course with other practices of meditation and so on, then you can attain liberation. But this is the fundamental building blocks of how to live your life if you want to attain liberation, okay? So the first one is ahimsa, which means non-violence, non-harming. I'm not going to explain that because all we've talked about for the past 5 minutes is that, right? How to live in a way we're not harming other life on this planet in any way, through thoughts, through words, through actions, okay? The next one is satya. Satya means truth, truthfulness, right? So you can take it as not lying, don't lie to others, but also it means really living in truth to yourself. So if you say to yourself that I'm going to hold myself to this standard from today in the way I conduct myself, then don't make that a lie. Actually stick to it. Don't be a hypocrite, essentially. That is really, really important. Do not be a hypocrite where you're saying one thing and doing another thing, because that ultimately it creates anxiety in you, right? It creates anxiety in you. So living in truth, essentially, these two, ahimsa and satya, are so powerful. Mahatma Gandhi, in the freedom fight for India, he used these two. You know, they were said that his weapons were ahimsa and satya, non-violence and truth. And they gave freedom to an entire nation. Surely, if we practice them as an individual, we also can attain freedom, right? The next one is asteya, which means not stealing, right? Again, not stealing, you know, if you are coming from a perspective of stealing, there is this part of you that wants to accumulate, right? So not stealing is important. Then this is a very, very important one, brahmacharya. Brahmacharya is often spoken about in the context of sexual celibacy, okay? So it does mean that, yes, but it also means celibacy in every aspect. Brahmacharya means walking the divine path, walking the divine. So acting in a way that is very pure through all your senses, right? So it doesn't mean that you are you know, restraining yourself sexually and then you're going and gorging on junk food. No, it's, you know, bringing a balance and purity into all your actions. You're eating, you're sleeping, you're exercising, what you watch, what you read, how you behave. All these things should be done in a pure, purified, gracious manner, essentially. Okay. The last one is aparigraha. Aparigraha means non-greed, non-possessiveness. So non-possessiveness, non-accumulation, right? Not trying to accumulate too much, living simply, the minimalist approach. And when you actually think about it, from what we have spoken about today, right? Our entire kind of lens in life is that, you know, more is better, right? I want more money, more cars, more houses, more this, more that, better holidays, grander, everything grander. But if you look at the idea of the law of karma that we have spoken about today, right? In order to accumulate, we've seen in order to accumulate anything, you have to do actions. And those actions are naturally going to harm other living organisms, other living beings, right? Just think about it. We looked at the most basic actions of just living and eating are harming others. So think about anything else, any transport that you use, right? The things, essentially, so many trees being cut down for what you want. So much, animal life is being abused for what you want. The oceans are being abused for what you want. We're polluting the oceans with all the garbage. We just dump it into the ocean. So we think that the more we accumulate, the happier we will be, right? This is the dream. The more we accumulate, the happier we will be. Yet we have people at the top of their career, at the top of the field, completely empty inside, committing suicide. It's because that hole that you're trying to fill actually does not exist, right? What we're looking for is the peace that we seek is actually within us. So we need to stop accumulating and instead, you know, go the opposite direction. Instead of looking outward, we must look inward and find that ocean, that treasure of peace, of bliss that exists. Okay? So I hope this makes sense. This is the essence of the Jain philosophy. The cause of suffering is your karma. How to get free from suffering is also your karma. Okay? And this is a philosophy that works. In fact, the person who gave us the philosophy, Mahavir, was an enlightened being. He had attained liberation. He had attained freedom while living. So this is a path, you know, there is no doubt that it works, right? And I think no matter what philosophy we're following, you know, you'll see these are actually the 5 yamas from the yoga philosophy, right? All of these are interrelated. We can learn from all of them. But from the Jain philosophy, something that we can and should learn is basically how to live a minimalist life, how to live a life that is not impacting the planet, the world in a negative way, knowingly or unknowingly, okay? So this is it. I really hope that you enjoyed this, the essence of the Jain philosophy. Thank you very much for watching. Namaste.